feel horrible denying the cast of Jerry Paris's genius for even a single episode. I'd feel so uncomfortable.
Everyone calls Ron Howard the nicest man in Hollywood, the calm captain who steers chaos into Oscar gold. But behind that polite smile, insiders whisper about a hidden blacklist. 7 names he vowed never to work with again. Friends, mentors, heroes, people who built his legend, then broke his peace. And at the top of that secret list stands one man who cracked the calm completely, Russell Crowe. On Cinderella Man, their partnership wasn't collaboration, it was collision. From day one, Crowe stormed onto the set like a general entering battle, demanding command of every scene, every shadow, every beat. Ron, known for quiet precision, suddenly found himself in a war of wills. "You don't understand the character's pain," Crowe once shouted across the ring mid-shoot, his voice cutting through the chaos. The crew froze. Howard didn't yell back. He just stared, a long, silent stare that said everything. Behind the scenes, the air turned electric, toxic even. Crowe demanded reshoots, tore apart takes he didn't believe in, and pushed Howard to the edge of control. "It felt like watching 2 titans trying to outwill each other," one crew member whispered. In private, Howard confessed to a producer that directing Crowe was like riding a bull while trying to build a church. When Cinderella Man finally wrapped, it earned respect, but cost Howard his peace. Reporters begged for another collaboration. His answer never changed. Once was enough. And that was the day Hollywood's nicest man learned that even the calmest hearts have breaking points. Number 2, Jim Carrey, the green monster that broke the calm Ron Howard, once joked that how the Grinch stole Christmas nearly stole his sanity. What was meant to be a whimsical holiday fantasy in 2000 turned into one of the most chaotic, nerve-fraying experiences of his entire career, and the reason wore green fur. Jim Carrey, the unstoppable comic genius, became something else entirely once the Grinch makeup went on. 8 hours a day inside, layers of suffocating latex and synthetic hair transformed him from actor to captive. By the 3rd day, the transformation was complete, and it wasn't just into the Grinch. The set turned volatile. Carrey snapped at makeup artists, shouted at assistants, even barked back at Howard himself. One morning, after yet another grueling call time, Carrey ripped off his gloves, stormed off set, and shouted, "You try acting inside a rubber coffin." Howard, Hollywood's unshakable optimist, tried to reason with him, but calm words met chaos. From then on, Carrey improvised entire scenes without warning, shredded dialogue mid-take, and hurled props across the set when frustration took over. It was like walking on broken glass, one crew member recalled. Howard's legendary composure began to fracture. He quietly met with Universal executives, confessing that the production was spiraling out of control. The studio's solution? They brought in a Navy SEAL survival expert, the same man who trained Carrey to mentally endure the costume, just to keep their star from walking off for good. By the time the snow settled and the final shot wrapped, Howard looked visibly drained, his eyes hollow but polite in every behind-the-scenes photo. When reporters later asked about Carrey, he smiled the way only a man who'd seen too much could and said, "Jim brought a lot of energy to the set." But behind closed doors, he admitted the truth. The movie had aged him years. The Grinch became a beloved Christmas classic, but for Ron Howard, it came wrapped in exhaustion, chaos, and a vow he's quietly kept ever since: never again. Number 3, Tom Cruise. When perfection turned to war, it's hard to imagine Ron Howard, the calmest man in Hollywood, locked in a creative standoff with Tom Cruise, the most powerful star of the early 90s. Yet on the sweeping 1992 epic Far and Away, that's exactly what happened. What began as a dream collaboration between 2 giants turned into one of the most intense power struggles ever whispered about in film circles. Back then, Cruise was untouchable, fresh off Top Gun and born on the 4th of July, a box office king who demanded absolute control. Howard, meanwhile, was the picture of precision, a director who thrived on quiet discipline and patient storytelling. But from the first week in Ireland, their energies collided like thunder and rain. Cruise wanted fire, speed, and fury in every frame. Howard wanted balance, grace, and rhythm. The result was creative combustion. One gray afternoon in Dublin, during a rain-soaked sequence, Cruise suddenly stopped mid-take. He tore off his soaked gloves, his voice sharp through the drizzle. "This doesn't feel real." The set went silent. Howard didn't raise his voice. He just looked at Cruise and said quietly, "Real isn't about noise, Tom." Those 5 words cut deeper than a shout and became a legend among the crew. Nicole Kidman, standing nearby, tried to mediate, but the tension only grew. Cruise began rewriting blocking on the spot, demanding retakes, pushing scenes to bleed more emotion. Howard's calm evaporated. His trademark smile vanished from the set. He started shooting extra coverage, backup angles, insurance takes, because he no longer trusted Cruise to deliver the same performance twice. When the film finally wrapped, Howard's exhaustion was visible behind the polite press smiles. Asked months later about the experience, he gave a quiet, almost philosophical answer. Some people confuse passion with chaos. He never cast Cruise again. Far and Away became a sweeping love story on screen, but off camera, it was the battle that reminded Hollywood's nicest man that perfection, when pushed too far, can turn to war. Number 4, Mel Gibson. The power struggle that shattered Ransom. Ron Howard thought he was hiring a professional. What he got instead was a battlefield. In 1996, Ransom was meant to be a powerhouse pairing, Hollywood's calm craftsman joining forces with Mel Gibson, fresh off his Oscar triumph for Braveheart. On paper, it was perfection. Discipline meets intensity. But the moment the cameras rolled, that balance shattered. Gibson didn't just act in Ransom, he tried to command it. Howard's sets were known for order, his scripts for structure. Gibson ripped through both. He questioned every lighting setup, rewrote dialogue mid-scene, and gave direction as if he were the man in the chair. One afternoon, tension exploded. Gibson slammed his script onto the table and shouted, "I know what the audience wants, and I want an Oscar for it." The crew froze. Howard looked at him, calm but razor-sharp, and said, "You're not the director of this one, Mel." The room went silent. After that, every day on set felt like a duel, Gibson's raw fire clashing with Howard's controlled precision. Gibson refused multiple takes, claiming that spontaneity made him real. Howard, losing patience, began shooting secret backup footage behind his star's back just to protect the edit. Universal executives flew in twice to calm the storm before it consumed the production. When Ransom finally wrapped, the exhaustion was etched into every face. The film went on to become a box office success, but the cost was heavy. Howard later admitted it was the most draining project of my life. Gibson praised the film in interviews, but never mentioned Howard's name again. And Ron? He never cast him again. For the man once called Hollywood's calmest soul, Ransom became the movie that proved even patience has its breaking point. Number 5, Marlon Brando, the Hollywood god who became Ron Howard's nightmare. Ron Howard once said, "Working with Marlon Brando was like trying to reason with a hurricane." It wasn't a metaphor, it was survival. Their brief collaboration in the mid-1990s was supposed to be a dream come true. A calm, disciplined director guiding the greatest actor of all time. Instead, it became the storm that nearly broke him. Brando arrived on set already irritated. He despised schedules, ignored rehearsals, and flatly refused to memorize a single line. To keep the production moving, Howard had cue cards taped all over the set, on lamps, on walls, even behind other actors, so Brando could glance at them mid-scene. But even that wasn't enough. One afternoon, filming ground to a halt when Brando threw down his script and declared, "This dialogue is garbage. Rewrite it. Now." Howard tried to reason with him, to find common ground, but Brando just smirked, turned, and disappeared into his trailer for 3 hours. When he finally returned, he announced that his character now had a new accent. No one knew what he was talking about until the cameras rolled and chaos took over the set. Number 6, Hugh Grant, the polite smile. Ron Howard. Couldn't stand behind the British charm and velvet suits, Hugh Grant carried a wit sharp enough to draw blood. To most, he was the picture of refined politeness. But to Ron Howard, he was something else entirely. A reminder that arrogance doesn't always shout. Sometimes it smirks. Their clash didn't unfold on a movie set, but across polished boardroom tables and Hollywood lunches in the early 2000s. Howard was quietly circling, Grant for a romantic dramedy under Imagine. Entertainment, something elegant, heartfelt, and human. But what should have been a friendly, creative conversation turned sour within minutes. Grant arrived late, breezy, and already unimpressed. "You Americans think emotion needs explosions," he reportedly joked, leaning back with a grin. The room laughed nervously. Howard didn't. The director sat stone-faced, his patience already thinning. Then Grant started dissecting the script, calling it too sentimental and suggesting the studio didn't understand real wit. It wasn't charming banter. It was condescension with a posh accent. When the meeting ended, Howard quietly shut his notebook and said, "I think we're looking for different things." That was it. The project went on without Grant, and Howard never entertained his name again. Years later, when Grant publicly mocked earnest American directors, fans didn't need context. They knew exactly who he meant. Insiders say Howard was livid, making sure Grant's name was permanently crossed off his production lists. The smile had fooled Hollywood for years, but Ron Howard wasn't buying it.